100 cases of people who wandered into the wilderness but never came back. Accounts of children, people
was a coyote,
vanishing,
dog, or
seemingly
else.
swallowed up by the many endless forests across America, or even later found in ways that defy logic.
An animal.
Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my central light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man.
She described the way that the creature moved would not be unnatural.
You've had problems in the neighborhood
It looked
before?
like it was
Yeah, my dog was
uncomfortable
killed here
in its
just
own
recently.
feet.
I don't know what it was, but whatever it was, it was standing out there. I'm out here
It
looking through
looked
the
like
window
a
now and I don't
vehicle.
see anything.
She
I don't want to go
believed
outside.
that what she was looking at was
Jesus Christ,
pure
you better.
evil.
Sure.
See ya.
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9" up.
Do you
Many
see
of the
him now,
cases
sir?
about
Yes, I'm looking
100
right
people,
at him.
at least, who claim that they've been abducted
hang
by
on.
aliens.
He's
One
right.
of Dr.
Is
Matt's
he in your
patients,
yard,
Linda,
sir?
Yeah,
who
he's
says
gone.
she
He's
has been
big.
Faded out.
abducted since childhood.
Reality is, I was just
what I remember
being brought up this tunnel of light, right?
being
Out
around my
of
bed.
this tunnel, I
And I
just
ran between them
noticed
and ran
parts
out
of my
of
life
the
that
room to
wouldn't
my
even
mother's
occur to me to
to
remember.
hide
Then I
from
knew that I
And
wasn't
I
being
never
brought
told
up,
anybody
that I
about
was
that, and I just buried it
And so then I came to the end of this tunnel and noticed there was a man that first
I
searched me
noticed
at first as
a
a place
mist or a fog
and I
kind
also
of
saw
moving.
relatives that had
The
died
action, the
that
motion
year.
caught my
Then
eye. It
the
actually
wizard,
started
without
taking
moving his
shape,
mouth,
taking
spoke to me and
form.
said,
The
"Struggle,
idea
you're
of the
too
Grim
young to
Reaper
die."
went through my head, cloaked figure. And as I was watching, it kept becoming more and more and more distinct to me that this was actually something with some type of presence. Like it knew I was there. And as I was watching it, it turned and looked directly at me. I felt like whatever this was angry at me. I wasn't welcome. It wanted me out. I had been face to face with a ghost or a demon, a spirit. I'm not really sure what. But this feeling of terror actually was going through me. And I really felt more that it was demonic. It was something very evil.
Everybody, and welcome to Real Supernatural Encounters. For my guest today, I have Troy. Troy, if you could, we give a brief bio about yourself?
So like you said, my name's Troy. I was born and raised in Glendale, Arizona. Just moved up to Washington State last year. In fact, it'll be a year at the end of this month in May. I've had some kind of strange encounters that I can't quite explain. Or at least some of them I can't explain. Some I can explain, but we're just kind of weird or creepy nonetheless. I'll admit that I am pretty skeptical about all of these things, but I do try and keep at least somewhat of an open mind about them, which is one of the reasons why I shared my story on Reddit and why I'm coming on here with you, because I'll be the first to admit I certainly don't know everything. If anyone can help me out or help you out and give some sort of logical foundation for how or why these things might have happened, that'd be great. And if not, then just sort of chalk it up to the supernatural, I guess. My grandfather and my dad were both really into like UFOs and aliens and all that sort of stuff. Not necessarily full-blown believers, but it was always something that was playing in the background on the TV or on the radio when I was growing up. So it's pretty cool to be able to I guess just share my stories with people and see what they think about things that aren't so easily explained.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm glad you're coming on to tell your story. So with that being said, Troy, if you're ready, you can go ahead and start with your first story, and then we'll just carry on through there.
Yeah. So I guess the first one I could start off with is one that happened when I was much younger. I was probably 13, maybe 14, and it happened aboard the Queen Mary, which for people that don't know, that's a former, I think, British naval vessel that was later converted into a cruise liner. That's now permanently, I guess, permanently docked on the coast of California, I think in San Diego. The boat has always had a history of hauntings. and that's something that's always interested me about it. It was some of the main hauntings are like I think one of them is when you go below deck, you can see like see or hear like the apparition of a child jumping into the swimming pool that's below deck. You can see, I think, see or hear an officer going through a doorway, and turns out supposedly it's a guy who was actually crushed in the doorway in the 40s or 50s. And the kid, I guess, concerning that, the boat rocked one way all of a sudden, and all the water from the swimming pool went to one side. As he was jumping in, he jumped in, cracked his head open, and died. Yeah. I never saw those ones though. I didn't see or hear anything related to those ones. But what I did experience though was when I was about 13 or 14, I went to the Queen Mary, and I took the little guided tour, except I kind of went off on my own. And I wound up doing the whole below deck thing. I don't know if I was supposed to or not, but I was 13, 14-year-old little badass kid. I didn't care. I wanted to do my own thing. And I went through all the areas that the tour went through, because I'd been there a few times before. Because I used to go to California to visit family every summer, and I'd been to the Queen Mary a few times before, and nothing strange ever happened. And as I'm taking the tour, I'm sort of looking around and waiting for something to happen. Nothing ever happened. So I was just like, well, all right, I'm about at the end of the tour now, and from the lower decks up to the promenade, there is an escalator that takes you up. And I got on the escalator, and all of a sudden I started getting this feeling like I was being watched. And I was the only one down there, to my knowledge. It's a pretty long escalator, and I started getting this feeling, and I sort of look around. I don't see anyone, I don't hear anything, and then I look behind me again, and all of a sudden I see on like maybe 10 steps below me on the escalator, I see black officer shoes with tan officer's pants going from the feet up to the knee, and above the knee there's nothing else. And as soon as I saw that, I mean, it scared the hell out of me, and I just hauled ass out of there. I took off running up the escalators as fast as I could, and I actually almost ran into one of the cleaning ladies when I got to the top. And when I got to the top, I turned around and looked back down, and there was nothing there. And that's is something that's always kind of stuck with me. I've never really been able to. Some of the stories I can give at least somewhat of a logical explanation to, as far-fetched as it might be. That's one that I can't justify in my head with any logical reasoning. And of course, there's the obvious of, well, you know, maybe you were hallucinating, maybe you were just seeing things, this and that. And I understand that. But if that's the case, it never happened before, and it's never happened since. So it's one of those ones that just kind of has me scratching my head, and has ever since I was 13 or 14 years old.
Okay. All right. If you're ready, you can go ahead and start with your next story.
Okay. Real quick, sorry about the noise in the background. Apparently, the ice cream man is out in the apartment complex, so that's what you're hearing. Hopefully, it's not too loud.
Nah, it's not that bad.
Okay, good. I guess for the next story, I guess, is mostly concerning the dreams that I've had,
Okay.
which I've so there are two types of dreams that I tend to have, or at least tend to remember. I don't tend to have, at least not until recently, within the last, and by recently I mean like 6 months to a year tops. Up until then, I generally had really bad night terrors and night tremors. Like just horrifying nightmares that would have me waking up, screaming or swinging my arms or something like that. And very rarely I'll have a good dream or a decent dream or a funny dream or whatever. So I'll either have those, or I'll have these types of dreams where I can more or less, I guess, predict the future in a way, but it's not anything cool. Like, I've never been able to predict the lottery numbers, or win a bunch of money at a blackjack table or roulette or anything like that. It's always just been super mundane, just everyday things. The earliest one I had, I think I was in like the 5th grade, and I had a dream where I was getting ready for school, and a couple of weeks later, step by step, verbatim, what was on the TV, what was being said, everything was happening exactly as it did in the dream. In fact, I specifically remember bending down to tie my shoe, and I remember thinking, wait, I've seen this before. I had a dream about this. And it's weird because I almost get like this uncontrollable urge to, or I'm sorry, I'm it's almost like I'm compelled to finish out the action exactly as it was in the dream. Like, I have to fight really, really hard to deviate from how it happened in the dream, which I always thought was kind of strange. Again, I don't know if I can sit here and say that stuff like that is 100% paranormal and that there's no logical explanation for it. But it's always kind of weirded me out when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never been anything too bad when it comes to those types of dreams. It's always just been very mundane, everyday things, changing a light bulb, or, like I said, tying my shoes or making breakfast or something like that. So that's one aspect of my dreams that I guess I'm not entirely sure about. The other one would be, like I said, the night terrors and night tremors and stuff like that. And I had one in particular that was almost a combination of the two, which was, I mean, thinking about it in itself is kind of scary, because the night terrors and night tremors I've had are generally pretty gruesome. And this one in particular, I remember I was, first of all, dating this absolutely horrible woman that I should not have been dating, which I'm sure I'm not. You can relate to that. Other people can relate to that.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I called her from when I was coming home from work, and she told me, she said something like, the weirdest thing happened to me today. When I woke up, I woke up, and I fall asleep looking at my cell phone every night, but I woke up today and my cell phone was about 7 or 8 feet across the room by the front door. And that's when it clicked in my head that I had this dream literally the night before, where I was, more or less, I was in hell, and I was being chased by this demon, and I was like in a city or something, and all the buildings were on fire, cars were on fire, people dead in the streets and screams and all that, all that sort of stuff. And I remember this demon caught up to me, and I'm running as fast as I can, and he's right on me, and I'm looking for some way to get away from him or get help or something. And I see the cell phone that's on the trunk of a car, and I run over to it, and he jumps up, and am I allowed to cuss on this show or not?
Yeah, you
Okay.
can.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure, but he jumps up on top of the car, and he slaps the cell phone away about 7 or 8 feet. And I remember thinking that in my dream. I was like, oh, the cell phone's like 7 or 8 feet away from me, and slaps it away. And he says, not today, motherfucker. And yeah, and I wake up. And then I get that phone call, and she brings up 7 or 8 feet away from her bed, that the cell phone is now magically 7 or 8 feet away from her bed. And why that's so weird to me is because, first of all, that's kind of a coincidence that I thought of in the dream, 7 or 8 feet. She mentioned 7 or 8 feet. There's also the fact that the way her bedroom was set up is there was like a wet bar between her bed and the door to her bedroom. So her cell phone would have had to travel up and over the wet bar to land in front of the door to her bedroom, about 7 or 8 feet away. Yeah, it's just one of those things that it kind of makes you tilt your head and like, oh, well, that's a hell of a coincidence. And that's, again, another one of those things that I can totally chalk it up to coincidence, but I'll be damned if that ain't a hell of a coincidence,
Yeah. All right. Would you like to go ahead and tell the stories of where the house you grew up in?
Yeah. That was I sort of grew up in between two places at the same time, with my dad and my stepmom, and with my grandparents and my uncle at their house. These all take place at my grandparents' house. It was sort of an older house for Arizona. It was built in the I think early 50s, which for Arizona it's kind of an older house if it was built in the 50s. And there was, I'll just start listing off stuff that I've seen in the house. There's there was, I don't know if there still is, this giant mural that was in the living room, and it was painted by the previous owner. It was just this really bizarre mural that was like a scene from like a Roman Colosseum or like Roman roadway or something. It was really strange. It was colored very strange with like I remember in the mural all the walls were like this burnt orange color. The road itself was this really weird mixture of like greens and blues. And the pillars were this really deep green, and some of them were broken, some of them were still standing. And the ones that were still standing, they had like these dark red veins that ran through them that almost looked like there was blood flowing through them. It was just a really strange mural that for some reason someone decided to paint on the wall, and my grandparents never covered it up when they bought the house. and there beneath that was a couch, and if you sat on the couch facing forward, there was like a wall of mirrors, which it just looked strange when you sat there and would look at yourself in the mirror and you have this kind of bizarre mural behind you, you know. I personally never had anything odd happen to me concerning that mural. But every time I had friends over, they would stay the night, and it was kind of funny as they were all kind of creeped out by the mural. I grew up around it, so it was sort of fine by me. But they would, every time they would sleep on that couch, they would always wake up and sleep on the floor because they would complain about having just really strange nightmares. And so it eventually got to be this sort of like running joke with me and my friends about, you know, like, oh, who's sleeping on the couch tonight? You know, who's got the balls to sleep on the couch tonight? That sort of thing. Never had any weird encounters there, but like I said, my friends definitely avoided it because of that. I don't necessarily think that that's paranormal. I think that that's maybe just their, you know, their subconscious getting the best of them when they're sleeping. But I think it's interesting to note. The other, God, what else has happened in that house? There was a chandelier in the dining room. And just for the record, this isn't some big opulent, you know, Austrian crystal chandelier or anything. It's just the chandelier that you would see in a house from the 50s or 60s with like four or five light bulbs in it. But that chandelier would sway. It would sway very gently back and forth when the windows were closed, when the air conditioner was off, when the heater was off in the winter time or whatever. It would start to gently sway back and forth, and it would happen just randomly. It didn't seem to occur around any specific time other than nighttime, which I always thought was kind of strange that it never happened in the daytime. And the only explanation I can give for that is where the house was or is it's maybe half mile from a train track where some, I mean, pretty good sized trains come rolling through. But I mean, Jesus, it's a half mile away. I don't know that the vibration of the train is going to carry that far to cause the chandelier to sway back and forth. And it was, you know, a pretty noticeable sway. It was like, you know, about like that. So it wasn't just sort of, you know, shaking or anything like that, like what you would get from, you know, being close to a train track. And there was my grandmother had also seen that. My grandfather had also seen that. I think my dad had also seen the chandelier moving as well in that house. My grandmother had also told me about the front door opening and closing, which I mean I can attest to it, that the front door, that was a very sturdy front door. It latched very easily. It wasn't like one of the more modern front doors where it's basically hollow inside. It was an old school all wood front door with glass in it. It's pretty difficult to move those things, and it latched very easily. The back door did not. I can totally understand if a draft or something blew the back door open, because it just didn't latch as easily. But that front door, she swears up and down that she saw it open and close on numerous occasions. And this was long before her mind started going because of dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever. This was when she was in her like mid 60s, I think is when she told me this. And that stuff didn't start happening to her until her mid 80s.
Okay.
So there was also the cupboards would open and close. That's something she and I had both witnessed. She had told me that she had seen the cupboards open and close, and I told her I'd seen the same thing on a few occasions. And I would always try to figure out again a logical reason as to why this was happening, because I'd be sitting at the kitchen table watching TV, you know, eating a sandwich or eating breakfast or something, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, out of my right eye, I would see the cupboards above the oven open, or I'd see the cupboards next to the oven open, or I'd see the cupboards below the oven open. And the first thing I always thought was, well, it's one of the cats. We always had cats. None of the cats were ever around. And none of the cabinet doors, they were the ones that had the little magnets on the bottom, so that way when you closed it, you know, like the magnet would latch. You would hear the magnet click open. You hear the magnet click closed when it would open and close by itself. And again, I would check. There was no wind. The windows weren't open. AC wasn't on. The heater wasn't on. They would just open and close every now and then, and I could never figure out why. There was also a neighbor that we had, this older woman named Phyllis, who my grandparents were kind of friends with, and they'd go over and visit her. And when I was younger, they would take me over to visit her. She lived literally across the street from us. It's just a very nice old woman. And one day when I was probably 14 or 15, I guess, not too long after the whole Queen Mary thing, actually, her grandsons came over who were a bit older than me, probably mid to late 20s at the time. And they told us that Phyllis had passed away.
Oh.
Yeah. And they were sitting down talking to my grandparents because they knew that she was good friends with my grandparents, and they're sitting there talking and everything. And they asked my grandparents, you know, is there, I know you guys were friends, so on and so on. Is there anything of hers you would want to keep, or could you use anything? Because we're just going to clear out the house and then put it up for sale. And my grandfather, for whatever reason, said, yeah, is there a bed over there? Because I didn't have a bed at the time. I was sleeping on a futon. And they're like, yeah, there's a bed over there. It was Phyllis's bed that she passed away in. My grandfather didn't care. And so I got this bed that this old lady died in. And I slept in that thing for not even a week, because after the second or third night, the bed would shake. And it wasn't, it was like one of those, I don't know, to me it's old school, one of those old school beds with like the wooden backboard and the wooden footboard, and it's got the wooden legs and everything. So I get that it's maybe not, you know, the most sturdy thing as far as movement goes, but when I say it would shake, I mean it would noticeably violently shake. Not exactly lifting off the ground or anything like in The Exorcist or something like that, but it was enough to where, I mean, you could feel it, you could see it, you could, if when I was laying on that bed, I could feel that bed moving back and forth, like really fast. It was shaking. I swear to God, it was shaking. And it wasn't, again, it wasn't enough to move the bed off the ground or anything, but it was enough to scare the hell out of me. And of course, the immediate thing that maybe you and others are thinking is, what if it's an earthquake? Okay, first of all, Arizona doesn't get very many earthquakes. I lived there for 37 years. I was born and raised in Arizona. I felt maybe 2 or 3 earthquakes my entire life. But each time I felt those earthquakes, it was over at my grandparents' house. Here's why that's important, because in that room that I slept in, hanging from the ceiling was this board, and it was hung from the ceiling by chains, and it had my grandparents' knickknacks on it from like when my grandfather was stationed in Germany, when he was stationed in Japan. Just had like beer signs and like Japanese art and stuff like that. The few times that I've experienced earthquakes in Arizona, that board has always moved. It's always shook, and you can very clearly see it. When this bed was shaking, that board was still. So it doesn't make any sense to me that it was an earthquake that was only moving the bed. It wasn't moving anything else. But yeah, I slept on that bed for 3, 4, 5 nights, and I think I was kind of embarrassed to tell my grandfather that like, hey, I think Phyllis is dead. I think Phyllis still wants her bed back. I didn't tell him, but my grandmother started noticing, that I was sleeping on the floor, or I'd sleep in the living room. I mean, my grandfather, like I said, he was a fan of like the supernatural and UFOs and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still embarrassed to kind of tell him that, just because, I didn't want to tell my grandpa that I was afraid of ghosts, especially an old lady's ghost. But my grandmother, I think, kind of picked up on it, because I would sleep on the floor, or I would sleep in the living room, and they eventually, not long after I started sleeping on the floor of the living room, they eventually just sort of said the hell with it, and took the bed apart and threw it away, and I just went back to sleeping on the futon for a while. But yeah, I could never, again, that's one of those things I could never come up with a reasonable explanation for. There was, I think the last thing I can think of about that house was actually concerning my grandfather after he passed away. My grandfather was a Freemason, and when he passed away, probably about 14 years ago now, 13, 14 years ago, when he passed away, I was still living there, as I was helping to take care of my grandfather. Then when he passed away, I helped take care of my grandmother until she passed away. But when he passed away, we, of course, had to clean out his bedroom and wrap things up for donation and take things that we wanted to keep and stuff like that. One of the things I had found in his bedroom was this old-ish, probably from the 30s or 40s, leather-bound book that wasn't very thick. It had no title or writing on the outside, and it was completely encrypted on the inside. Everything was written in symbols. There was no punctuation. There was no like line deviation to show, paragraph 1, paragraph 2. It was just all one continuous line of code, basically. And the only English that was in that book was, I think that the name of the publisher, which, if I remember correctly, was a Masonic publishing company or a Freemason like private publisher or something. I remember researching it. It was something like that.
Mhm.
But I decided to take the book and see if I could maybe try and, crack some of the sentences and see if I could read something. I'd always kind of like doing ciphers, and that's one of the things I took from my grandfather after he passed away, to see if I could just see what was going on with the Freemasons, because I remember when I was younger, I'd always ask him about the stuff around the house, like his ring, the G with the compass.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I always used to ask him about that. I always used to just say, "Oh no, it's a secret. I can't tell you this and that." And for the record, I don't think that the Freemasons are involved in some sort of satanic New World Order takeover thing or anything like that. But I think that it's something that still interests me. So anyway, I get the book and decide I'm going to try and decipher it. And I remember falling asleep with that book on the bed for like 3 or 4 nights. And then on the fourth or fifth day, when I woke up, the book was gone. And I asked everyone involved that was helping to clean out the house, which was my dad, my aunt, my uncle, my grandmother. Those were the 4 people, and not including me, who were cleaning out the house. No one ever fessed up to it. No one ever told me that they took that book. No one ever told me that they even saw that book. Which, and again, in my brain, I guess I try to justify it with, well, maybe one of them's lying. That's not at all like my family. They will tell you the truth, whether you like it or not. They almost get off on you not liking it. Kind of one of those families. So I do believe them in those regards. Obviously, I checked between my bed and the wall. The book wasn't there. I checked on the floor in front of me. It wasn't there. It was never tangled up in my sheets. It never magically appeared underneath my bed or anything like that. It's almost as if it just disappeared one day, and it was just one of those things that, say, well, here's this book that's very obviously, I mean, I guess at least somewhat important to the Freemasons, because it is encoded. And one day it's there, the next day it's not. I never saw it again.
That is so crazy.
Yeah.
Now,
So it was a weird house, to say the least.
I think. Oh, and what you got? One more story, I believe. The time that you were a security guard.
Yeah, I actually remembered one other one that I didn't know if you. I think I told you about it, about my 21st birthday. I don't know if you wanted to include that one or not.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can include any and all of them.
Okay. I just wasn't sure. Yeah, I guess I'll go with that one then. And then I'll do the security guard stuff after.
Okay.
So for my 21st birthday, I decided I wanted to go camping, and I had invited a few of my friends along, and my friend Sean and I had met up at Denny's the night before my birthday, to jump in his truck. We had all of our stuff, and we were gonna head up north, up to the high country, which is what we call in Arizona. You go up north onto the plateau. We call that the high country, where it's the valley, the Phoenix, the Valley of the Sun, is obviously a desert. It gets 115, 120 degrees in the summertime. But if you go up in the high country, it's about 20, 25, maybe 30 degrees cooler. And you're sort of surrounded by pine trees and nothing crazy thick. It's not super thick forest, but you can tell that you're definitely not in the valley anymore. So we head up there that night, to get everything set up, made a fire, had a few beers, and just sort of bullshit and having a good time. Go to sleep and wake up the next day, and my friend Kenny was on his way. Kenny knew where we were because I had been camping in that spot a few times before. And so Kenny shows up and he hangs out for a little bit. And he eventually goes back to Phoenix to pick up our other friend, Andy. And me and Sean were just like, all right, dude, well, we'll see you in a few hours then or whatever. Kenny takes off and Sean and I are again just hanging out, bullshitting, having a good time. Not drinking though, because it was still kind of early. And we got a fire going and we're just hanging out and talking, and all of a sudden our water bottles, which we both had the big 1 gallon jugs of water, they were about 20 or 30 feet away from the fire. All of a sudden we start hearing things hitting our water bottles. And the obvious answer at first is, well, it's just pine cones. So we didn't think too much of it. And it starts happening a little bit more frequently. And we're like, well, how many pine cones does this pine tree have exactly? So we're looking at the water bottles, and all of a sudden something hits it. Something hits one of the water bottles. The water bottle, the one that it hit, if I remember right, it wasn't full. It was like a third of the way full, or maybe a quarter of the way full or something. But whatever it was that hit it, the water bottle standing still, and then it gets hit and it tilts on its side. And so Sean and I are both like, well, it's clearly not a pine cone, because a pine cone's not going to come from the side, hit something hard enough to tilt it on its edge like that. So we're getting a little nervous, because it's just two of us out in the middle of the forest, waiting for our friends to come back. And it keeps happening every now and then. And I had my 22 long rifle, and Sean had his 9mm semi-auto on him. I don't know if it was his service gun or not. He was in the Air Force. But anyway, we're sitting there with our guns, just kind of like, well, I guess we'll just wait and see what happens, because we didn't see anyone or anything. But again, our water bottles keep getting hit with something, and it's being hit hard enough to where it is moving them on the side a little bit. So we're just sort of sitting there waiting for Kenny and Andy to get back, and they eventually come back, and we tell them what's going on, and we're a little freaked out by it. And their obvious response is, you guys are, you're hearing things, or you're seeing things. It's just pine cones or whatever, which would have been my response too, if I had just walked into that situation. But me and Sean are both like, no, just sit down and listen and watch those bottles right over there. They're not pine cones. And they sat down and they started watching the water bottles, and sure enough, it starts happening again. Something is being thrown at the water bottles, and it's being thrown hard enough to where they're being tilted on their side. So now Kenny and Andy are starting to come around and realize this isn't pine cones. These aren't pine cones falling. This doesn't make sense. So eventually we just get sick and tired of it, and being young and I guess just young and ballsy and having access to firearms, we're just like, well, all right, fuck it, you're not gonna ruin my birthday. So Kenny gets his car, moves it around to where it's facing into the woods. Sean does the same thing with his truck. They both turn on their high beams, so that way we have some light. Because at this point it's dark, and I remember Kenny starts cranking AC/DC, and he gets his 22. I've got my 22. Sean has his 9mm. I think Andy had like a shovel or something. I guess it's better than me. I mean, he was trying, you know. So we're like, well, let's go find out what's doing this. We're not going to put up with this shit. And so we start going into the woods, and we get maybe 40, 50 yards from the cars, and we were kind of fanned out as best we could while still kind of keeping each other in sight, you know. And we hear something run, and it took off pretty fast. Something about it didn't sound right though. The way it was running, it didn't sound like the way an animal runs. It sounded, I guess, almost more human. Like, you know how when an animal runs, a four-legged animal, it has like an almost gallop to it, like that da-da-dun, da-da-dun, da-da-dun. This didn't sound like that at all. It didn't have that rhythmic sort of gallop to it. And I think either Sean or Kenny had something thrown at him when they were out there. Granted, we didn't see it, so that maybe that one was a pine cone falling, but I'm pretty sure one of them mentioned something about having something thrown at them, or like a rock rolled towards them or something like that. And then, you know, we hear running. Never saw anything, never heard any like vocalization or anything like that. But we eventually were like, well, whatever the hell it was, I guess we scared it off. So we went back to camp, and you know, it was supposed to be a birthday party. We were supposed to be drinking this whole time, but I don't think we started drinking until about 7 a.m. when the sun came up. Because we were all pretty on edge about that whole situation. And you know, me trying to find a justifiable, logical reason for it. I mean, the obvious answer is, well, it's the forest. Maybe, you know, it was a deer. Maybe it was a cougar or a black bear or something like that. But I would assume that an animal would bolt the second that their car engine started, or the second that they flooded that area with light, and certainly the second that Kenny started blasting AC/DC and we start walking towards, you know, whatever's out there. I would assume that it would have taken off a long time ago. But yeah, that was my one hell of a memorable 21st birthday, I guess.
That is awesome. All right, and then did you have any other stories before you get to the security guard stories?
I don't think so. No, I think that that's about all I can think of anyway.
All right.
So yeah, I guess I'll get into the security guard stuff. For anyone wondering, if you ever want to take yourself out of your comfort zone, go be a security guard. Especially a security guard for apartment complexes. You'll be taken out of your comfort zone in a few ways. One, you'll meet some of the most horrible people you've ever met. And two, you won't get paid very well for it. So if you're looking for a little bit of adventure with a little bit of a paycheck, go be a security guard. Because my God, that job was terrible, but it had its perks though. One of the things that happened to me was I had been promoted to patrol driver, and I had gotten a call for a noise disturbance out in Scottsdale. And for people that don't know, Scottsdale is kind of like a it's east of Phoenix. It's almost like our answer to Beverly Hills. It's not quite as fancy, but there's a lot of money in Scottsdale. A lot of money, a lot of rich people, a lot of huge apartments, huge houses, stuff like that. And I had gotten the service call out in Scottsdale at an apartment complex that I've never been to before. And walking around looking for the apartment, I remember it said something like, neighbor is making strange noises or something like that. Please knock on door and ask them to stop or whatever. And before I could knock on the door, I could hear what they were talking about through the door. And it sounded like a woman was having sex. It was very obvious. Yeah, it was very obvious. I mean, sexual sounds that you would hear a woman make when she's having sex. And so I was like, oh, this is what the service call is about. Okay. But not long after that, after those sounds, there was a brief moment of silence, maybe like 2 or 3 seconds. And then an extremely deep guttural growl. Like I'm really the death metal and grindcore. If you listen to that type of music, imagine those vocals. And that's what it sounded like. And then I was like, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it because this is something that scared the hell out of me. And then it would go back and forth. It would stop for like the growls would stop for like 2 to 3 seconds, and then it would go back to the sounds of the woman having sex, and then stop for 2 to 3 seconds, and then would go back to that really deep guttural growl. And I mean, I was only getting paid $14.50 an hour. I'm not knocking on the door for that. I'm not going to find out what the hell's going on for $14.50 an hour. But I hung out there for a couple minutes just trying to figure out what is going on, what I was hearing. And obviously that one it could be drugs, it could be a mental illness of some sort. That one I think does have a bit of a logical explanation for it, but I mean, I'll be damned if it didn't scare the hell out of me. And I eventually, like I said, I hung out for 2 or 3 minutes, and I just said, you guys don't pay me enough to deal with this. So I took off. I called Scottsdale PD and told them what was going on, explained everything to them. And I think I told my supervisor that I knocked on the door, but never got an answer. And then I just took off. And fast forward a couple months after that, I get called back to the same place at the same apartment for the same reason. And this time when I showed up, I didn't hear anything. So I decided I would just go ahead and knock and try my luck. And no one ever answered, but I did hear what sounded like something falling over or someone jumping, or I heard a loud kind of banging noise on the floor, but no one ever answered the door. And honestly, I was okay with that. I didn't want to talk to whoever the hell was in there anyway. So that was the last time I ever got called to that specific location. And then the last crazy experience I had as a security guard was the I guess you could call it the skinwalker experience. I don't know how else to describe it really. And for those who are watching this, I don't necessarily believe that people can turn into coyotes and that they have magical powers or anything like that. But I do think that there are people out there who believe that they can do that themselves. And I think that that can make people a bit more dangerous than you might give them credit for. But this one took place in Phoenix before I got my promotion to being a patrol driver as a security guard at around 19th Avenue and Camelback, which is already a really, it's not the best part of town. It's not the worst that Arizona has to offer, but it's not the best. And it was at this apartment complex that was predominantly lower income and refugees from everywhere from Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, just all over the place. Most of the people there were super nice people. And there was a resident there who was a native guy that I would talk to every now and then before work. We just sort of shoot the shit before I started my shift. Never had any real problems with him. But one night he was out on the balcony, and he had obviously been drinking, which was pretty normal for him. I think he would just get off work and go outside, and, have a few beers and listen to music, and smoke some weed, stuff like that. And but this night though, seemed like he'd been drinking a little bit more than normal, and he started chanting really loudly in his own language, and I could hear it from the other side of the complex. So I rush over to see what the hell's going on, and we just ask them to keep it down a little bit, because I at that place in particular, I always try to avoid calling the cops because I know that a lot of people there were already having a tough enough time of life as it is. So I would always try and defuse whatever situation I could without involving the police department. But I ran over there, and I guess he had gone back inside because he wasn't out on his balcony, he wasn't out front by his front door, and I didn't hear the chanting anymore. So I started just chalking it up to him being drunk and just having too much fun, and started doing my rounds again. And 5-10 minutes later, I start hearing him chant really loudly again. So I go back over there, and this time when I get there, he's already coming out the front door. He's coming out the front door with his pregnant girlfriend or fiance or whatever she was, and his older son, who's maybe 16, 17 years old at the time. And he's upstairs, I'm downstairs on the ground floor. And he says, he just says, "Hey man, follow me real quick." I was like, all right. So I start following them into the parking lot. I'm following all three of them into the parking lot, and I notice what looks like a good sized knife in his son's hand. As we get in the parking lot, and there's the lights and everything, I can see that it's actually just this really big feather, and I see that his dad also has two smaller feathers. I'm guessing they were from eagles, maybe, because they were, I mean, even the smaller ones were big. They were just smaller than the one the son had, which was close close to a foot long, at least 9-10 inches long. It was a good sized feather. And we get into the parking lot, and there was this woman there who I had kicked out earlier for actually causing a scene with this native guy's roommate. I didn't know that it was his roommate before that night, but I knew that guy lived there, and this woman was just causing a huge scene. So I told her to get the hell off the property, and she go out there, and she's back, and this time she has her kids with her. One of whom is 7, 8, maybe 10 years old at the most, and the other one is young enough to be in a stroller. So I would say under a year old. And the native guy, his son, and his girlfriend all start approaching her, and I'm following behind, like, what the hell's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, they start saying something in their language. They're whispering real quietly in their language, and the dad is over the baby, or I'm sorry, the native guy is over the baby in the stroller, and he's rubbing the feather on the baby's face as he's whispering this, and the kid with the big feather is rubbing that feather on the older boy's like his face and his shoulders and stuff, and it's obviously scaring the older kid. I could see he was visibly shaking, and right as I was about to tell them to stop, the mom, who I kicked off earlier, just starts freaking out, and she starts yelling, "Get the fuck away from my babies, you sick fuck, this and that. Don't you put that fucking evil on my babies." And the native guy and his son both stand up, and the native guy, in like a really, really guilty voice, is just like, "We're not doing anything wrong. We can't be doing anything wrong. I even brought the security guard here to prove that we're not doing anything wrong." And she says, she says, "He doesn't know what the fuck's going on," which is very true. I had no idea what was going on. I have no idea what's going on at this time. And she says, "If you're not doing anything bad, then why don't you do what you're doing to your pregnant girlfriend? Why don't you rub those feathers and say those words on your pregnant girlfriend's belly?" And him and the son, sort of, he leans into his son. They start whispering something in what I think was their language. I couldn't make out a word of it. And as they're turning around to face the guy's pregnant girlfriend, the son, he starts freaking out, and he starts calling his dad all these fucking names. It was, "You're still fucking evil. You're still a fucking evil piece of shit. And I'm half Christian, and I'm not doing this satanic shit," and so on and so on. And he just bolts down the parking lot. The dad and his girlfriend are yelling at him to get back here, and I'm sort of standing there again, just asking what the hell's going on at this point. I start trying to get the woman and her kids off the property, because there's clearly something's going on that I guess maybe shouldn't be going on. I finally get them to start moving towards the exit, and I take off running, looking for the father and the son. And I didn't find them, but what I did find was a trail of blood by this or on this sidewalk that led to a set of benches. and I found a trail of blood and a bunch of vomit, like someone had just thrown up, and a knife. And I'm like, well, I kind of don't have a choice now. I have to call the cops at this point.
Yeah.
So I call the cops and tell them what's going on. They're sending someone over, and I go back to his place, and I see that now he's there, and he's got this huge just gash from like here to here on his forehead. And his girlfriend is like using bandages to help him and everything. And I remember I asked him what the hell was that about, and he's like, don't worry about it, bro, don't worry about it. And eventually goes inside. PD eventually shows up, and I explained to him everything that happened. They knocked on the door. There was never any answer. They said there's nothing they can really do because the person that was attacked doesn't want to talk to them. So if he doesn't want to talk to them, nothing more they can do. And they took off. I was talking complex, and I told him I was unit, whatever it was, 216 or whatever. This weird incident happened last night, and he's like, oh, you mean James or whatever his name was. He says, yeah, he actually moved in here not long after he got released from prison for manslaughter. So I've been keeping an eye on that guy for a while now. And what, like, that really kind of hit a chord with me, because if you know anything about skinwalkers or any sort of Navajo, witchcraft, essentially is what it is, I guess. Becoming a skinwalker involves the murder of someone. That's one of the big steps you have to take to become a skinwalker. There was also these Kachina dolls that were tattooed across his chest. I don't know if that has any significance to the story or not, or if it's just a tattoo of some Kachina dolls. I really don't know. But that's another one of those stories that, I mean, I can definitely chalk it up to a sort of a semi-logical explanation of just a family being weird or something. But the way that woman was freaking out when they started doing, some sort of ritual over her kids, I mean, that definitely stuck with me. The way that the son was freaking out definitely stuck with me. The fact that somehow that son produced a knife and either slashed or chopped his dad in the forehead, kind of stuck with me. And I saw the son later. He didn't have any markings on him. So, and by later I mean a week or so later. Okay. But that's just that's one of the craziest things that I think I've ever saw when I was a security guard. And I don't think people can turn into coyotes. I don't think that they can be privy to these sort of magical powers that can bend the universe and physical reality to their will or anything like that. But I think that there are some people out there who believe they can do that. And while they can't, bend nature to their will or anything, I think that they can still be dangerous if they're in that sort of heightened state, Yeah. So that's about it as far as I can think of.
All right. Well, before I start with my questions, I have a lot of them. I got to say, your stories were pretty incredible. You did a great job being very detailed with them too. So for my first question, I want to start with how has these paranormal encounters changed your life?
I guess if anything, they've sort of made me take more of a turn towards the agnostic, which I've always been agnostic when it comes to things that I don't understand, but I was usually very quick to just dismiss it. Once even the most far-fetched of logical conclusions was reached, I would be like, well, that's clearly what it was, and then just dismiss it outright. But after experiencing these things for myself, I guess it's just made me realize that, you know, a far-fetched logical conclusion is still pretty far-fetched.
All right. Now, you mentioned when you were in the Queen Mary, did you have any other experiences after seeing the workers' feet up to the knees?
No, I didn't. And I had been back there a couple times afterwards, and I was always kind of bummed about that. That, you know, that was the only thing I saw, because that is a pretty famous ship. It does have some pretty, I mean, I guess you could say well documented paranormal sightings. The lady in the I think the green dress in the one of the restaurants, and like I said, the kid in the swimming pool, stuff like that. I never saw any of that though. That was the only real experience I had on the Queen Mary. But I would like to go back and look again. I'm trying to, my fiance and I are getting married this October, and I'm trying to talk her into having our honeymoon on the Queen Mary to see if we can find anything.
That's awesome. You should let me know what happens. And back on, and you guys tell your experiences if you had any.
Yeah, I'll see if I can talk her into it.
Let's see. Have you said that you've had nightmares and stuff all the time? Have you ever experienced sleep paralysis?
I don't. If I have, I don't remember. I can't recall it. I do remember waking up and seeing things that I guess technically weren't there. But I don't remember being paralyzed or having that feeling of trying to move but can't, you know. I remember one time, one of the more vivid ones actually. I was again at my grandparents' house, sleeping on a normal bed that an old woman didn't die in, and I remember waking up. I don't even remember what the nightmare was about, but I remember waking up and seeing this giant black beetle crawling across my bed. And for people that aren't from the Southwest, we do actually have these huge black bugs that I think they're called a Palo Verde burrowing beetle or something like that. I mean, when I say big, I mean they're about as long as a pack of cigarettes. Yeah, they're pretty big. But I remember seeing it crawling across my bed, and across my bed onto the bookshelf, which my bed was butted up to my bookshelf. And I remember slapping it with my hand, and I felt it. I felt this insect hit my hand, and I reached over and I clicked on the light real quick, and it's gone. There's nothing there. I checked. I mean, I checked everywhere because it's a giant bug. I don't want it crawling around in my bed, and I could never find it. Again, that's not to say that I didn't overlook it, you know, or something like that. But I could never find it after I hit it. Another time, I remember waking up and, in fact, this one was recently. It's one of the few, I guess, nightmares or night terrors or whatever you want to call it. One of the few that I've had in the last year, which, like I said, thankfully they've started to get better. But I remember having this nightmare about being chased by a grizzly bear.
And I remember in the dream, I was in a room, and I saw the grizzly bear was standing in the doorway. And I remember in the dream, I was just kind of like, well, I'm fucked. And so I turned away from it, like expecting it to, swipe at me and kill me or whatever. And that's when I woke up. And I remember in the dream, I could feel its breath on me. And when I woke up, I could still feel the breath on me until, like a couple, like 2 or 3 seconds after I woke up. And then I turned over, and obviously there was no bear there or anything, but I thought it was interesting and still kind of scary that I could actually feel the breath on me even after I had woken up and after I had opened my eyes up.
Wow, it really makes you think, like, what's really going on,
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that, I'm 37. I'll actually be 38 this Friday. So I've been dealing with this for almost 4 decades, having these night terrors and night tremors, and they still scare the hell out of me, because even though after I wake up and I realize it's a dream and everything, the dreams are always just so incredibly vivid and incredibly realistic that it's almost like you're living, that I'm living in my own, like, personal hell sometimes when I have those night terrors. So it's something that has stuck with me for a while, and I'm very grateful that they've started to decrease over the years, or over the last year, finally.
Wow, yeah, I'm glad that they're starting to decrease. I want to know what I would do if I was having those type of dreams. Now, what is the most recent premonition dream you've had?
The most recent one was, again, very mundane, very everyday. My fiance and I were, I think, driving back from her mom's place, and we were on the freeway, and there was I think it was a black or a blue van that was on the left of us. And just like in my dreams, the van sped up and it got in front of us and then passed another car and got right back. And I looked over at my fiance, and I was like, yeah, I had one of those things again where I dreamed about it, and then it just happened. And explained to her, this was the dream, and she's like, oh yeah, that's exactly what just happened, actually. So, but like I said, it's never anything cool. It's never anything like the lottery numbers or anything like that.
Now, what does she think about your dreams and everything that's been going on with you?
So she actually has the premonition ones as well. I don't know that she has them as frequently as I do, but she has stated a few times since we've been together, hey, I had one of those dreams again, and then at work the exact same thing happened, or we'll be out at a restaurant and oh, well, this is exactly like how it went in my dream, and you ordered a Sprite instead of a Dr. Pepper this time, and stuff like that. She doesn't really, I'm very thankful she doesn't really get the night terrors and night tremors, and things like that. But she does have some of those weird, like, premonition type dreams as well.
Wow. Now, whenever you're about to have this deja vu, do you ever try to change it from being what you dreamt it to being something like random?
Yes, and that's something that I've found it takes a lot, like a lot of I guess willpower or mental energy to change what's going on. Because usually it's almost, it's weird, because when I realize that it's happening exactly like how it happened in the dream, I'll often that's when it'll click in my head. Okay, had a dream about this. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open the door, or I'm gonna turn on the light. But it's almost like I'm being I'm being put on autopilot. It's really hard for me to overcome that urge to not follow through step by step verbatim with how it went in the dream. I've been able to do it a couple of times, but it takes a lot of effort, and I've always thought that was just the weirdest thing about it. Even to me, even more strange than the dream becoming reality itself, because I'm a very, very stubborn person, and the fact that I'm all of a sudden having a hard time, not opening the door or changing the channel or whatever the mundane thing is, the fact that I'm having such a difficult time doing that always kind of freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah. Wow. Now, you mentioned that you've had a lot of nightmares, but what was the most vivid nightmare you've ever had?
There was one that I had that still sticks out to me. One, I'm not one of those people that has reoccurring nightmares or reoccurring dreams, but I'll have like reoccurring themes within my dreams or nightmares. One of those themes is like being in a hypercube, like a cube, like a 4-dimensional cube or something like that. That once you get in, you can never get out. Like, have you ever seen the movie Cube or Cube 2 or Cube 3 or anything?
Yeah, that's I think I
Okay.
have. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Kind of like that. Where it's just this box of like never-ending geometric possibilities, kind of.
That's interesting.
Witches, yeah. Witches have also always played a huge part in my dreams, even though I'm not afraid of witches or witchcraft or anything like that. But I've noticed that that's kind of been a constant theme, I guess. But one of the more vivid ones I had was I was in one of these hypercubes, in like this, it was like a big dilapidated warehouse, which is often how the hypercube presents itself in my dreams. And I was running from something, I don't know what it was, but all of a sudden I'm in this room that was basically essentially my uncle's room, but was put in a different location, like in like apartment, like a high-rise apartment almost. And I remember there was a I mean, sorry if this disturbs people, but there was a dead baby that was in the ground in my uncle's room. And I remember looking at it, and it was like this weird green gray color. I remember getting into my uncle's room. I look down, I see the dead baby, and all of a sudden it splits open, and spiders come crawling out of it, and like way more spiders than a dead baby could hold, which is a strange sentence to say. But they just start overtaking the room and overtaking me. And I think that one might be one of the more vivid ones, because that one I genuinely do have a little bit of arachnophobia. So I think that one kind of stuck out with me. But it's always that when I do have those nightmares or night terrors or whatever, it's always pretty gruesome stuff like that, pretty morbid stuff. And I mean, I'm glad that as of right now I have no kids, because that would probably mess with my psyche pretty bad, if I woke up from that. So
Well, yeah. Well, so man, so you're having these vivid nightmares, and do you think that they could be linked to maybe real worlds, like say parallel universes or something like that, where your consciousness is going into another self of you, and you're actually going through those things?
yeah, I'd never really thought of it like that before. That is kind of an interesting question. I'd never thought of it like that before. I suppose that it is entirely possible.
Okay.
I mean, I know that when at least I think I'm right in saying this, that our dreams are influenced very much by our subconscious, and I don't know where my subconscious gets these things from. So I mean, hell, you might be onto something. Because I know usually when I have these dreams and I'm in the dream, I'm terrified of whatever it is that I'm running from, or whatever it is that's stalking me or chasing me or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm usually not afraid of it in reality, like the witches and stuff like that. I've never had a fear of witches in my life. The grizzly bear one, never been afraid of bears in my life. Oh god, what were some other ones that I would come across? Alligators used to be a big one for some reason. Yeah, that was a reoccurring thing. I'm not saying that I want to be around alligators or grizzly bears, but I've never had any strange fear of them or anything. So I don't know where that's coming from. But yeah, I mean, hell, I never thought about it. Maybe you're onto something. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I've always thought about that. When people have dreams, it could be multiple things, from like premonitions to, your conscious, your body shuts down, so your soul is always awake. So it's always good. It's doing something. So it goes off to another world. And what's crazy is that we've been told that these worlds and the universes, everything exists in our mind. And it's like your mind is here and we're inside of mind. It's so complex.
Yeah, I will say this. I do definitely believe in parallel universes, and the multiverse,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And I'll admit I've been interested in using the subconscious, I guess, as a way to sort of explore that notion, or explore those theories, if you will. I don't know if there's any credence to that at all, but I've heard similar theories put out, and it's something that has interested me.
Okay. Do you think you would ever consider doing some type of hypnotherapy to kind of get into what could be causing them or anything like that?
Yeah, I'd be interested in trying that out. My aunt actually recommended I try that. She actually told me that a couple years ago. Her reason for it was because she wanted to know about like past life regression, or whatever that one's called.
Yeah.
Because when I was a kid, I would apparently come and tell her all these war stories of the violence I saw in the Civil War when I was a kid.
Wow.
So yeah.
Maybe that's like something that's for real, like connected to you. Maybe all those, everything you probably was reincarnated from something horrible, like some kind of battle you were in, and maybe you was in tons of different past lives where you're in wars and battles, and maybe it's just like fear now. It's with you. It's came with you every time, and it's kind of just piled up.
As skeptical as I am about all these kinds of things, that is one of the things that I'm more, I guess, a bit more open to.
Okay.
Is the whole past life, reincarnation sort of thing. And I don't know why, even at my most like skeptical or most atheist, or however you want to call it, that was always something that I was like, well,
that might be a possibility still. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to hear if you end up getting either the past life regression therapy or even the hypnotherapy. That'd be great to kind of figure out like what's really going on, who you used to be back then, and
yeah,
what's creating all these problems.
yeah, I wouldn't mind trying that. I also wouldn't mind trying the what do you call it? The isolation chamber, the isolation tanks, I always
Yeah.
thought that that'd be pretty cool to try.
Yeah, it's supposed to better your mind and your well-being, with
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that.
yeah, I would like to try that too, actually.
Yeah.
Um, now you was talking about where you had this nightmare where this demon is chasing you and smacks the phone out of your hand.
Mhm.
And then where was your girlfriend at this time? Was she at another house or something, or
Yeah, thank God we didn't live together. She was at a completely separate house. Um,
and it was her phone?
yes, yeah. In fact, I remember it was her phone in the dream.
Okay.
I remember because well, at least it looked like her phone in the dream. Same model and all that sort of stuff.
Wow. And before I get to this next conclusion of that question, do you ever sleepwalk or anything like that?
It's funny you mentioned that. I used to do it when I was younger. Um, not not frequently, but enough. I mean, enough to where like family or friends would kind of joke about it every now and then. And before I moved up here to Washington, I was living with a buddy of mine back in Arizona, and out of the blue, I started sleepwalking again for no reason I could think of. Um, and I remember one time I woke up in the bathtub with water. And what was really weird about that one is, I mean, besides sleepwalking into the bathroom and drawing a bath for myself and everything, was that we actually didn't have one of the the plug that you put in the drain. So if I ever had a hard day at work and I had to relax in the bathtub, I had to use the heel of my foot to like block the drain. And I woke up in freezing cold water with the heel of my foot over the drain, and it's kind of like, well, how the hell did I get in here? Another time, not long before, I forget which one happened first, either before that or after that, I had another sleepwalking incident where, and this one I remember doing, which is really strange. I've never had that one before, because I could see everything I was doing when it happened. I walked into my roommate's room and I stood in his doorway. I think I kind of scared him, which I didn't mean to, but I remember he was like, he was just laying in bed with the covers over him, and he's like, "Hey, you need some help?" I just kind of, I muttered something, and then I went into the bathroom, or no, I went either the bathroom or the kitchen, and I grabbed like some paper towels, and I started like just cleaning up his floor. And then I stood up and went back to bed, and I woke up, and I remember asking him, I was like, "Man, did this weird dream, did I walk into your room?" And he's like, "Yeah, you did actually." And then he started cleaning my floor.
That is so funny, man. That is so funny.
Yeah, but I before then, I hadn't slept walk since maybe like 13 or 14. So that's a good 20, 21, 22 years between episodes that I can recall. I mean,
Wow. What when that demon slapped that phone into your hand, what happened after that? Did you wake up or did something else happen?
no, after he slapped the phone away, like I said, he said,
I think he said, "Not today, motherfucker," or something like that.
Yeah.
And he was looking at me, I was looking at him, and I was awake. And just for the record, in that dream, this was a person, or this was a demon that looked more or less exactly like a normal human being. But it's one of those weird things where in the dream, like, you know that that's a demon, you know that that's, you know, an agent of evil, or however you want to put it.
Yeah.
It just like I knew that I was in hell, even though it just looked like a city. Like if I was to draw it, it would just look like a city that, you know, had seen war or had just been bombed or something like that. But in the dream, I knew that it was hell, and I knew that this thing was a demon, stuff like that.
Wow. What did your girlfriend think about this when you told her the dream after she told you, like, hey, my phone went over this thing and it went about the same distance you just mentioned, you know, in your dream?
Yeah, she was definitely a little weirded out by it. And I mean, she was I don't know if this is a thing among these people or not, or if, you know, it just happened to be her family. But she was Romanian. She was from Romania. Her family was from Romania, and they were very. She was a horrible person, but her parents were very nice people. But I'm just being honest. But all of them were, all of them had. I don't know if this is the right phrase for it or not. Sort of old world beliefs. Like there was a lot of stuff about bad luck and
Yeah.
good luck, and you know, in dreams and, you know, all that sort of stuff. I don't know if that's just a Romanian thing or if that's just how that family was, but the whole family was very into that sort of like old world European, you know, evil eye, and, you know, wearing blue on a Tuesday is good luck and stuff like that, or whatever the hell they thought.
Yeah, I've heard that they do have their old, I guess, beliefs or superstitions of how they do traditional things.
Yeah.
Now, you were also talking about when you were at your grandparents' house. Let me first ask, who was Phyllis to you?
She was just a nice old lady that lived across the street. I remember she lived next door to another nice old lady named Kate, and my grandparents would talk to both of them, and they would talk to each other, and you know, it was never I never got any weird feelings from her, or she never did or said anything creepy or scary to me or anything like that. She was just a nice old lady that my grandparents would talk to occasionally.
What? Let me first ask this one. What did you think when that bed first started shaking? Like, did your heart drop? What was going through your head?
I mean, I was, I'll be honest, I immediately was pretty on edge after that. I tried to justify it, you know, with it's an earthquake, or it's an old bed, and maybe my heart's just beating really hard and really fast, and that's what's making it shake. But no, if it was my heart beating that hard and fast, I'm pretty sure I would have had a heart attack. Like I said, if it was an earthquake, then I would have seen that board with all the beer steins and stuff from where my grandfather was stationed. I would have seen that movement. I would have seen that shaking and rock or swaying back and forth, which it wasn't. It was perfectly still. It was perfectly still.
Why do you think that? I guess you would think she's haunting the bed, but why would she haunt the bed for, you think?
I don't know. You know, I've read a bit about well, I guess quite a bit about paranormal. Still not 100% believer, but it's something that's always interested me. And I guess maybe it's, from what I gather, like it's something, if this theory is correct, it's something that she was attached to or something that she saw as hers.
Mhm.
I mean, it was the bed that she died in, you know. So, maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You said that your grandparents, or was it your parents? Yeah, your grandparents that had a mural in their house that was
Yeah.
just really odd, and it gave like an odd presence. Did they ever have anything supernatural happen to them or around them?
You mean concerning that mural?
Yeah, like causing weird
Not,
things happening in the house.
not to my knowledge. I mean, the stuff about, like I said, the cabinets opening and closing,
Mhm.
that all happened in the kitchen. The front door that was open and closed, according to my grandmother, that was by the mural. But they never really seemed to pay it any attention other than it's the mural on the wall, and it was painted by the previous, or one of the previous owners. That's about the most they ever told me about it.
Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. So for my next question, do you really think that Phyllis was the one shaking the bed?
I don't know. I would guess that if there are such a thing as spirits or ghosts or whatever, that to me would be my first guess, is that it was Phyllis, because like I said, that was her bed, that was the bed she passed away in. But I've also read enough on the subject to know that just because a person dies in that house and the house is, or the object or whatever, becomes quote haunted, doesn't mean that it's the spirit of that person
Right.
that you're experiencing.
Okay. Now, did you ever experience anything after throwing that bed away?
No, that was it. After the bed was gone, that experience with strange things happening in that room, as far as the shaking and stuff like that, that was gone too.
Okay. Okay. Now, for the audience who don't know what Freemasons are you able to kind of give a description of what a Freemason is?
I mean, sort of. It's to the best of my knowledge, it's like a fraternal sort of secret society. Um, they have meetings in buildings without windows, so the outside, people on the outside can't see what's going on.
Mhm.
Once they go into the back room and stuff like that. Um, it's given way to a lot of conspiracy theories concerning them, which to an extent, I guess I understand, but I just don't personally see much evidence towards Freemasons being some sort of secretive, malevolent cabal of people that are intent on, overthrowing the world and installing some sort of, new world order or something like that. I mean, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, but my grandfather, and granted, I know this is just going off of personal experience, but my grandfather fought in the Pacific Theater in World War II. He was in the Korean War and he fought in Vietnam as well. So he saw 3 wars, and was throughout all 3 of those wars, he was a Freemason. He was the nicest guy you could have ever met. All he wanted to do was just, cook hamburgers and make people happy and that sort of thing. So if there was some sort of nefarious plot that the Freemasons were behind, I don't think that my grandfather knew about it.
Okay. Okay. When you looked at that book, Could you remember and draw any of the symbols that were in it?
I remember there was um the I think there was a few astrological symbols that were in it. I think I specifically remember seeing the symbol for Taurus, I think, which is like the oval with, like, a horn on either side.
Hmm.
I remember seeing the some letters from the Greek alphabet that were in there. Um, God, what else? I think like a asterisk
Hmm.
or asterisk, however you pronounce it. The star symbol on the keypad of your phone.
Yeah.
I think I remember seeing that. Some of them I don't think I'd ever seen before. And I didn't really get a chance to um really decipher anything because there was no like formal sentence structure to it. I don't remember there being any punctuation or anything, like I said.
Yeah.
Um, and for anyone wondering, when it comes to deciphering stuff, at least for the English language, as long as it's ciphered in the English language and you can decipher it in the English language, some pretty easy things to or simple things to remember is that E is the most common letter in the English language, and the word "the" is the most common language, or the most common word in any language.
Mhm.
So obviously for us as native English speakers, it's THE. For Germans, it's D or der.
Yeah.
And that's actually worldwide in any language. That is the most common word. But it made it really difficult to get far with it, because I'm by no means an expert in cryptography or anything. It's just something I do for fun. But it made me difficult to get far in it because there was no punctuation, there was no break between words or anything like that. So I had the book for, like I said, 3, 4, or 5 days, and then it was gone. So I couldn't tell you anything else about it, unfortunately.
Okay. You know what's so strange is it's such a coincidence that you've seen a Taurus symbol in there when that's your symbol for your astrology sign.
Yeah, and I think that's why I remembered it after all those years, is because that's obviously my birthday is, like I said, in a couple days, and that makes me a Taurus. So
Yeah. It makes you almost wonder, you know, you were purposely supposed to see it or grab it or something, but within those days you wasn't able to decipher it. So it's just, just disappears. So it almost makes me wonder, what was its purpose when it was in your hands?
yeah, I've kind of thought about that over the years, because I I hate I hate the idea of fate or anything related to it. But at
Mm,
the same time, there are these things that happen that it's like, man, that's a hell of a coincidence for the universe to be unordered,
mm.
and completely chaotic. So yeah, I've thought that too over the years, though. Yeah.
Now, what do you think happened to that book?
I mean, the I if anything, I would say that there are two possibilities. One is that a family member did indeed take it
Mhm.
and just absconded with it, and decided to lie about doing so for whatever reason, for their own purpose. Um, or that it sat there hidden away somewhere for years, despite all my attempts at finding it.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, it might have gotten thrown away when I moved out. Um, but again, though, God, I looked for that book so hard and so many times, and I turned that whole room upside down, put it back together, and turned it upside down again. Um, I asked my father, my grandmother, my aunt, and my uncle multiple times if they had seen it, and no one ever fessed up to it. And like I said, I don't come from a family where they beat around the bush and bullshit you about something. If they did something, chances are they're going to tell you about it.
Okay.
But those are really the only two possibilities I can think of.
If you could guess, what would you think was written inside of it? What do you think it was telling?
I would say it was probably, there's just a total shot in the dark, that it had something to do with describing, I guess, for lack of a better word, some of the rituals that the Freemasons are known for doing. But I don't know that it's, again, I don't know that it was anything nefarious or evil or anything like that. It might have seemed strange. I've definitely read and heard some things about Masonic rituals that, to an outsider that doesn't understand, the symbolism of everything, may look pretty bizarre and strange. But if I had to guess, I would say probably something to do with some sort of initiation ritual or something like that.
Okay. All right. Now, my next question are going to kind of revolve around when you guys was in the woods for your birthday. What do you think was throwing whatever it was at your guys' water bottles?
I honestly have no idea. I have no idea. I think that maybe from an outsider looking in, the initial response might be, well, it was one of your other friends that came up to play a trick on you on your birthday.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew anyone that was that stupid, because everyone knew that I had guns, that my friends had guns, we all had guns, and none of us were ever afraid to use them. We all went out shooting fairly regularly. So if it was a friend that was playing a joke on us, one, they never confessed, and two, that's a pretty ballsy joke, considering that most of us had firearms and weren't afraid to use them. But I can't say for certain what or who that was. I know that in Arizona, we have the quote unquote legend of the Mugion monster, which is kind of like our version of Bigfoot, I guess.
Okay.
It's not very well known, and I think it's more of like a local joke, but it's just something to mull over for people that are watching or listening out there.
Okay. Yeah, my first assumption was it was a Bigfoot, just by just I'm thinking it's pebbles being thrown, possibly, and that was just what kind of made me think maybe it's probably what it was. And then when it ran off after you guys had your guns, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
Now I don't.
I'm not gonna say. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like I said, that to me, the whole Mugion monster thing has always seemed more of like just like a joke, or like, some goofy rumor that people up north like to tell. But like I said, we didn't see anything. We heard things, and we experienced those you're probably rocks being thrown at the water jugs, but we certainly never saw anyone or anything for that matter. So
I wonder why he was choosing to throw the rocks at the water bottles out of all things.
I don't know. And it certainly didn't hit every time, because we would hear, stuff like roll by, like if whatever was throwing the rocks or whatever, it would throw it, miss the water bottle, and you'd hear the rock sort of skip along the ground a little bit. So.
All right. Now let's see. Now here comes my favorite questions for the apartment. What do you think was growling in that apartment?
I don't know. Because if that was the one that I heard that was growling, fucking sign her to the best fucking death metal band, because those growls were fucking serious. Like those were some good growls, but at the same time though, they did scare the hell out of me. Again, it totally could have been just someone, you know, playing a trick on this local security guard.
Yeah.
If so, it worked. You know, good job. It's because it definitely scared me. I know that a while after that, I got a call for a totally different apartment complex on the other side of town. In fact, one that I used to live in with my current roommate, actually. There was a woman in the laundry room who was just spun out of her mind on meth or pills or something. And she was just flailing around and making all sorts of just weird, almost inhuman noises. But it didn't sound anything like what I heard that night. It never got that, you know, that big switch up from that sound of, you know, pleasure and ecstasy to that really deep guttural growl out of nowhere. This was just someone who was very obviously having a bad time on whatever drug they were on.
Okay. If you could compare it to like any animal growl, what would you compare it to?
Maybe I mean I can't compare it to an animal growl. I don't know, like I mean the closest I could think of is like maybe a bear, maybe.
Okay.
I mean it was a super deep guttural, like death metal, like that sort of sound.
Okay.
So I don't know. I couldn't really compare it to any animal. It sounded like very obviously made by a person, but at the same time, I guess I have a hard time with that because again, it goes from these, you know, high pitched feminine sounds of ecstasy and pleasure to that you just switches up real quick. So that always kind of stuck with me about it.
Okay. Yeah, I'd probably be really terrified having to go knock on that door and you think it's like a woman having sex, but instead all of a sudden you hear the exorcist growling at you as you're about to knock on the door.
Exactly. And as a security guard, you hear plenty of people having sex. You get very familiar with what that sounds like. But that was the only time I've ever heard it being accompanied with like a Cannibal Corpse type of growl. So,
man. So now when it came to you seeing that father and that son, where they took the feathers and they brushed it against the little child and the older child, you feel like that was some kind of ritual. Have you had any bad luck or anything bad happen since that ordeal happened?
not that I can think of.
Okay.
Nothing. I mean, nothing to me personally. No. Like I said, I saw the guy's kid a few days later, and I saw him that night and a few times afterward. We never spoke of it again. I mean that. I guess to be fair, that whole complex was bad luck, but you know it was bad luck before that night happened anyway. So.
Okay. And have you heard anything since of the woman that got kicked out?
No. I never saw her again. It wasn't, I mean, maybe a couple months after that I got promoted to a patrol driver. So really that place was one of my regular regular patrol places. So I was there every day. So I went from being there every day to being there once a month for like 15 minutes, if that. But in between my time as doing foot patrol and patrol driver, I never saw her again.
Okay. All right. I have a really good question for you. Because with everything you've told me, makes me wonder if this could be a connection. Have you ever had any near death experiences or close to one?
When I was like 3 or 4, I actually drowned in the backyard swimming pool.
Wow.
I don't remember a whole lot about it. My older sister actually dove in to save me. According to her, I was done. I didn't have a pulse or a heartbeat or anything, and I was like at the bottom of the swimming pool. I was so young, I don't remember it. But she says that I had no pulse, no heartbeat, and she was giving me CPR, and I guess that here I am today. It obviously worked. But I don't have like any fear of water or anything like that. In fact, I'm actually drawn towards water. That's one of the reasons why I moved up here to Washington, was to be closer to the ocean. I just like the ocean. I like the rain. I like water in general. So.
Okay. Now, did you ever see anything when you died as a child? Did you see any like any afterlife or anything like that you can remember?
The only thing I can remember, and I don't know if this makes sense, but the only thing I can remember about it is the color blue.
Okay.
I can't really elaborate on it, but every time I go back to that time, which again, there's not much I can recall about it, but every time I think about it or go back to it, or even when I hear about people drowning in movies or on the news, I just think of the color blue and just have this very like neutral sort of feeling. Like I almost want to say almost dead feeling. That's a bit too on the nose. I don't know how else to describe it. But it's just the color blue and like a feeling of nothingness, I guess.
Okay. All right. I have one more question for you before we have you lead out with the closing comments and stuff. I have my own personal opinion because you just told me you had a near-death experience. But why do you think all this supernatural stuff has happened to you?
I think it's just a matter of being in the I guess right place at the right time, or wrong place at the right time, depending on how you look at it. Is I'm not really someone that goes out of his way to experience these things, but at the same time, I'm interested enough in them to where if the opportunity arises, yeah, I'll check it out. You know, like I said, I do want to go back to the Queen Mare to see if I can experience something once all this, once all this COVID shit blows over. It'd be really cool to do the like ghost tours up here in Washington and that sort of stuff. My fiance and we've been wanting to do that for a while. So I don't know that I'm any more or any less susceptible to it than the average person. I think it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time.
Okay. Yeah, I can agree with that. A lot of people I've talked to, actually a lot of people that came on here has told me a bunch of their supernatural personal stories, and come to find out they would had near-death experiences one or a few times, which then made like these things more like attracted, like a magnet to them. So it's so amazing for you to tell me that not only do you talk to your mom about your reincarnation, past lives of being in wars, but then you die, you come back, and then from there on out, you have had nothing but paranormal, supernatural events and experiences happen to you.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing, you know.
Yeah, I've thought about that too, and I've read about that sort of like being a connection. People that have had near-death experiences or people that have died and come back, that now all of a sudden they're, they can see this stuff everywhere, or they experience it all the time or whatever. So I guess maybe that does sort of, I guess, magnetize people, you could say. If that stuff is real, then that, to me anyway, it would make sense for it to act as a magnet for those people.
Now the only question is the nightmares that you have. That's the big one. Now I do know people have had nightmares after dying and coming back, and that could be possibly it too. But if you do ever go to a hypnotherapist or past life regression therapy, please let me know. I would love to hear what they found out or what your stories are and anything further that you end up experiencing. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, that's something I wouldn't mind trying. So if I do get around to it, then hell yeah, I'll let you know, man.
Okay. All right. Well, Troy, I appreciate you for coming on. If you could go ahead and, give any advice or closing comments for anybody who might experience the same things as you.
My best advice would be always look for some sort of physical or logical reason for these things happening. Because you totally might overlook something, and it's possible that I've overlooked something when these things happen to me. But at the same time, I think that it's fair to keep an open mind about it, because we don't know as far as ghosts and stuff like that are concerned. I mean, we can certainly draw our own opinions on the subject, but I think at the end of the day, we're not going to know until it happens to us,
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to be skeptical, but don't be so skeptical that you rob yourself of something that might be kind of cool.
I agree. Well, Troy, I really do appreciate you for coming on, and I hope that the audience, takes in your advice and your experiences that you've had and uses that for whatever knowledge they may need. And I hope that you, if you have any more experiences, come back on and, tell some more of your stories.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it. And if I can think of anything else, or if I do that past life hypnotherapy stuff, I'll be more than happy to talk to you about it.
All right. Well, Troy, thank you for coming on, and hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. It's been another episode of Real Supernatural Encounters. So just want to say thank you guys and have a great evening. We'll see you later.